Black boy brings broken laptop to class. What the teacher discovers breaks her. The morning sun cast long shadows across the cracked sidewalk as 12-year-old Malik Thomas walked the familiar path to Jefferson Middle School, his backpack hanging low, the weight of it not only physical but something heavier, emotional, invisible, yet undeniably real. The faint creak of worn-out hinges echoed each time he shifted the bag on his back, and inside, buried between crumpled math homework and a half-empty composition notebook, was the broken laptop. Its once sleek body now bore a spiderweb of fractures on the screen, the casing chipped at the edges, and the power button half stuck, as if unsure whether it still had the strength to turn anything on. Malik knew what he was walking into. This was the third time in 2 weeks he'd be showing up without a working device in a school where digital assignments were the norm, and teachers expected every child to log into their Google Classroom as naturally as breathing. It wasn't that he didn't care. He cared more than most. But caring didn't fix the fact that the second-hand laptop his uncle had gotten from a flea market last Christmas had taken its last breath one rainy afternoon when the roof of their apartment started leaking again. He gripped the frayed straps of his backpack tighter as he turned the corner onto Harrison Avenue, the school now in view, its pale bricks already warmed by the rising sun. Kids swarmed the front entrance, laughing, calling to each other, earbuds in, phones out. Malik kept his eyes down, trying to avoid the embarrassment that always followed when someone glanced over his shoulder and noticed what he carried, or what he didn't. Inside room 203 MS, Ellis adjusted the stack of handouts on her desk with the kind of care only teachers who still believed in their students showed. Her room smelled faintly of vanilla and dry erase markers, and along the far wall, a string of fairy lights glowed even in daylight, a soft rebellion against the harsh fluorescent tubes overhead. A former Teach for America recruit who had chosen to stay in the same school long after her contract ended. MS. Ellis had always believed that education was the one place where the playing field could be leveled, even just a little. She had taught honors students and kids who couldn't yet read. She had worked with children who came to school hungry, tired, scared, and still tried. She glanced at the roster pinned to the corkboard beside her desk, her eyes resting on one name, Malik Thomas. There was something about that boy that clung to her heart like a quiet echo. He was always present, always polite, and always somehow hiding in plain sight. As the bell rang, students shuffled into their seats, chatter slowly giving way to the quiet rustle of notebooks opening and keyboards clicking. Malik slid into his usual spot near the back, not because he was shy, but because it gave him the best angle to watch, to observe, and to keep his struggles to himself. MS. Ellis smiled at the class, her voice clear, warm, and steady. All right, everyone. I want you to log in and pull up the writing assignment from yesterday. You'll have 20 minutes to finish your responses before we discuss them in pairs. Malik hesitated. He could feel the heat creeping into his cheeks as he reached into his bag, pulling out the broken machine as delicately as if it were a wounded animal. A few nearby students glanced his way, then looked quickly back to their screens, the unspoken awareness hanging in the air like fog. The screen blinked once, then faded to black. Nothing. He pressed the power button again. And again. Nothing. MS. Ellis had been making her usual rounds through the rows, checking in with students, offering gentle nudges or quiet encouragements, when she caught sight of him. At first, she said nothing, just watched him sitting there, hunched slightly, as though trying to will the device to life with the sheer force of his concentration. Something inside her stirred. She knelt beside his desk, her voice low so the others wouldn't hear. "Hey, Malik," she said. "Is it still not working?" He didn't look at her at first, just nodded. She paused, then gently asked, "Can I take a look?" With visible reluctance, He slid the laptop toward her. As she examined it, she noticed more than just the cracks and damage. She noticed the sticker on the corner, faded now but still legible. It said, "Property of Williams Community Library." The library had closed down almost 2 years ago. Ms. Ellis said nothing for a moment, then looked at him, really looked, and saw a mix of fear and pride in his eyes. Pride because he was here every day trying. Fear because he didn't want pity. Not from anyone, especially not from her. "Do you mind if I hold on to this for a bit?" she asked softly. He nodded again. As the class continued, Ms. Ellis stepped back to her desk and plugged the laptop into a spare charger she kept for emergencies. The screen blinked again, stuttered, then revealed the desktop. Frozen, jagged with error messages, and nearly unreadable. But then something else caught her eye. In the corner of the screen, behind the digital clutter, was a folder titled, "M's Project, Don't Delete." Out of habit, she clicked it, not expecting anything but maybe a homework assignment or some saved files. What opened instead was something that made her breath catch. There were over 50 files inside, handwritten notes, scanned sketches, spreadsheets, slides, diagrams. They were labeled with titles like "Prototype V1, Sensor Mapping," and "Grant Draft Rough." And in the middle of them all was a video file. "Play Me, Final Presentation." Ms. Ellis glanced at the class. Still working, still typing, and then, with trembling fingers, clicked play. What appeared on the screen was a shaky video taken in what looked like a bedroom, walls covered in science posters, wires snaking across the desk, a cardboard and aluminum creation sitting center stage. Malik's voice came through the speakers, nervous but focused. "My name is Malik Thomas," the boy on the screen said, "and this is my project for the National Junior Inventors Challenge. I built a wearable motion sensor to help my grandfather, who has Parkinson's, stay balanced when walking." Ms. Ellis froze. Her heart dropped. She hadn't known. No one had. And suddenly, this broken laptop wasn't just a broken laptop. It was a window into a boy's quiet brilliance, into sacrifice, into effort that had gone unseen for far too long. Ms. Ellis sat at her desk in silence, the faint hum of the projector and the ambient noise of keystrokes all around her reduced to a distant backdrop as she watched the rest of the video unfold on the battered screen. Malik's voice, though quiet and unpolished, had a clarity and conviction that commanded attention. Not through volume or flair, but through sincerity. The prototype he held up was small, clunky, made of reused wires, a repurposed Arduino board, and tape-wrapped sensors. Yet there was a clear elegance in its intent. He explained how the device used basic accelerometers to detect imbalance and gently vibrated to signal the wearer when their posture tilted dangerously. At the end of the video, Malik looked into the camera with a hopeful sort of grin, the kind of expression that tries not to expect too much but still dares to believe in something. "If I win," he said, "I want to use the prize money to get help for my granddad. But even if I don't, I hope this shows that people like me can build stuff that matters too." The video cut out and Ms. Ellis found herself sitting there, the glow of the screen reflecting in her eyes, blinking slowly as if coming out of a daze. It wasn't just the project that moved her. It was the quiet loneliness behind it, the effort made in silence, in secrecy, perhaps even in shame. Not because he lacked pride in what he had created, but because he had grown too used to a world that rarely listened when someone like him spoke. She looked up again, scanning the classroom. Malik was still sitting in his seat, his face an unreadable mask, a pen twirling between his fingers as he pretended to work. He had no idea what she had seen. When the bell rang, students began shuffling out, backpacks slung over shoulders, conversations resuming mid-sentence. Malik stood too, gathering his things with practiced swiftness, his broken laptop still sitting on her desk. She called to him just as he turned toward the door. "Malik, could you stay a minute?" He paused, glanced back, his posture stiffening slightly, instinctively bracing for judgment, disappointment, or worse, pity. "Yes, ma'am." He stood before her desk, eyes steady but wary, as though he knew she had looked inside and was preparing himself for whatever came next. "I saw your video," she said gently, "the one labeled Final Presentation." His mouth opened slightly, then closed again. His gaze dropped to the floor. "I didn't mean to invade your privacy," she continued, "but your laptop came on just long enough to let me see it. And Malik," she exhaled, voice catching ever so slightly, "what you've built, what you tried to build, is incredible." He didn't respond at first, just stood there, shifting the weight from one foot to the other. "It's not finished," he muttered. "The sensor wiring gets messed up sometimes. It's kinda glitchy." "That doesn't matter," she said. "You built it from almost nothing. And the idea, the reason behind it, helping your grandfather, it's remarkable." A long silence passed between them. She didn't press. She just let the air hang, let him decide whether to speak. Finally, in a voice that was barely audible, he said, "Most people don't really care about that kind of stuff. Like, they say it's nice, but then they move on. I entered the contest, but I never got to submit it on time. The laptop broke the day before the deadline." MS. Ellis felt her chest tighten. "You didn't tell anyone?" He shook his head. "Didn't see the point." She leaned forward, resting her elbows on the desk. "You've been carrying this around for months, haven't you?" He nodded. "I think it's time we make sure other people see what you've done." He looked up at her, eyes wide, not with excitement, but disbelief. "Why?" "Because brilliance deserves to be seen, Malik. And because no one should have to hide how hard they've worked just because they didn't have the right tools." She pulled out a notepad and began jotting something down. "There's a regional STEM showcase coming up in 3 weeks. I know the coordinator. We can find a way to get you in. I'll talk to the principal. I'll talk to whoever I need to talk to." He blinked. "But the project's still not working right. And I don't have parts. Or, like, money to fix it." "We'll figure it out," she said without hesitation. "If you're willing to keep working on it, I'll make sure you have what you need." Malik didn't say anything for a long time. His hands, which had been clenched into fists by his sides, finally relaxed. "You'd really help me?" She smiled, and there was something fiercely protective in it. "Malik, of course I would. You don't have to do this alone." That afternoon, while other kids went home to video games or after-school snacks, Malik stayed behind in the classroom and, for the first time, pulled out the actual device from his backpack. Wrapped carefully in a dish towel, it looked like a contraption straight out of a science fair from another era. Duct tape seams, cardboard supports, wires with colored bands twisted together, but Ellis saw something else entirely. She saw a spark, a vision, a story waiting to be told. She helped him inventory what parts were salvageable, what needed replacing. They made a list: basic sensors, a soldering kit, a microcontroller. She told him she'd reach out to the PDA and to some old contacts from her brief stint teaching computer science in another district. Maybe even crowdsource it, she said, smiling conspiratorially. Malik sat there, listening to her plan, nodding slowly. And then, for the first time since she had known him, he smiled. Not the tight, polite smile he used in the hallways. A real one, full, wide, and caught between disbelief and gratitude. The news traveled through the school faster than Ellis had expected. Not because she had made an announcement, but because hope, when it takes root in a place starved of it, grows like wildfire. It began with a whisper in the teacher's lounge. "Did you hear about the Thomas kid? Ms. Ellis is helping him rebuild something for a tech fair or some kind of invention. I thought he was just one of those quiet kids, you know? Keeps to himself, never causes trouble." Exactly. But apparently he's been working on this device for months. For his grandfather. No kidding. By the end of the week, the school's STEM club advisor had stopped by room 203 to offer spare equipment. The custodial staff dropped off an unused rolling cart so Malik could work on his project without balancing parts on his lap. One of the assistant principals even forwarded Ms. Ellis a link to a district-wide innovation grant for underserved students. But while adults shared raised eyebrows and cautious admiration, the students responded differently. Malik noticed it first in the hallways. Instead of getting the usual half-hearted nods or polite ignorance, people started looking at him, really looking. A seventh grader he didn't even know by name approached him near the vending machines. "Hey, you're the robot kid, right?" Malik blinked. Kinda, yeah. My cousin's got tremors. Like serious ones. My mom said there's no tech for it unless you've got like 10 grand. The kid paused, hands jammed into his hoodie pocket. "You really make something for that?" "I'm trying," Malik replied, a little overwhelmed. "It's not perfect." The boy shrugged. "Still dope." He walked away before Malik could say thank you, leaving behind a strange feeling. One he hadn't experienced much before. Recognition. And then, one morning, Ms. Ellis walked into the classroom holding a large envelope with the school district's seal. She set it on Malik's desk without saying a word, but her smile said enough. Inside was a letter informing him that he had officially been registered for the Tri-County Youth Innovation Showcase, a regional event sponsored by 3 school boards, 2 tech nonprofits, and 1 major corporation, East Tech Systems, the same company that made the educational Chromebooks half the school used. The final line read, "Your project represents the spirit of ingenuity and perseverance we seek to uplift. We are honored to include you." Malik stared at the letter so long that Ms. Ellis finally had to gently tap the desk. "Still with us?" He looked up at her with wide eyes. This actually happened?" She nodded. "It did. But we've still got a lot to do." And they did. The afternoons blurred into evenings, and the classroom transformed into a mini-lab. Ms. Ellis cleared a back table and stocked it with donated parts. Malik learned to solder wires more cleanly, fine-tuned the device's response times, and even drafted a PowerPoint presentation with help from a girl named Layla, who sat 2 rows ahead of him and had a knack for formatting things to look clean and not boring. "I never knew you were into this kind of stuff," Layla said one day as she adjusted the slide titles on his presentation. Malik gave a small shrug. "I never had a reason to show it." Layla nodded slowly, then smiled. "Well, it's kinda cool you didn't wait for permission." For a moment, he wasn't the boy with the broken laptop anymore. He was the builder. But the most unexpected moment came the week before the showcase. Ms. Ellis was in the middle of her planning period, grading essays, when the office called over the intercom. "Ms. Ellis, you have a visitor waiting in the front office. Says it's urgent." She frowned. "Did they say who it is?" "No, ma'am, but they asked for you by name. And for Malik." When she arrived in the front office, Malik was already there, sitting in one of the plastic chairs with his legs pulled in, his eyes darting nervously to the woman standing near the receptionist's desk. She was tall, with sharp cheekbones and tired eyes that hadn't seen sleep in a few nights. Her blazer was too formal for the setting, her shoes too clean for the sidewalk outside. She carried herself like someone used to being in charge, but unsure how to handle the moment she just walked into. Ms. Ellis, she said, extending her hand. My name is Cassandra Thomas. I'm Malik's aunt. I'm his legal guardian. Ms. Ellis took her hand, trying to hide the surprise in her expression. Nice to meet you. I wasn't aware you were coming today. I just flew in this morning, Cassandra replied, glancing at Malik with something complicated in her gaze. There's something I need to tell you. Something you need to know. They moved into a side office, away from the students and the gentle buzz of the main hallway. Cassandra sat, folding her hands, looking not at Malik, but at the table in front of her. I didn't know about the project, she began. Not until a woman from the PDA reached out. I thought maybe it was a mistake. But then I saw the GoFundMe link. Someone from your school must have shared it. It had Malik's name on it. A picture of his grandfather. She swallowed. His grandfather, my father, passed away 6 months ago. We didn't tell Malik right away because he was already dealing with so much. The school move, the eviction, everything. My brother, Malik's dad, he's not in the picture. And I've been working 2 jobs just to keep up. I guess I didn't see how much he was carrying. Malik's head dropped. He hadn't looked at either of them the entire time. His voice came out strained and hoarse. I knew, Aunt Cassie. She turned sharply. What? I knew he passed. I found the letter in your drawer. I just didn't want to stop working on the device. Because if I stopped, then it would really be over. He wouldn't be here, and the thing I was making for him wouldn't be real anymore. The room fell into a silence that neither Cassandra nor Ms. Ellis dared break. Finally, Ms. Ellis reached across the table and placed her hand over Malik's. You kept going, she said, her voice thick with emotion. Because that's what people do when they love someone that much. They keep building even if no one's watching. Cassandra wiped her eyes. I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner. I'm proud of you, Malik. He looked up, eyes brimming, and for the first time since the project began, he didn't look like someone trying to carry the world alone. He looked like a boy who had just been seen. The day of the Tri-County Youth Innovation Showcase arrived under a slate-gray sky that threatened rain, though Malik hardly noticed the clouds above as he stepped out of Ms. Ellis's car, clutching a neatly packed cardboard box with his rebuilt prototype inside. He had worn his best polo shirt, navy with a small stitched logo on the chest, and ironed khaki pants that Aunt Cassie had bought the day before. She stood just behind him now, protective and quiet, her large purse slung over her shoulder, watching her nephew with a mixture of pride and nervous energy. Inside the community center, the atmosphere buzzed with ambition and anxiety. Banners lined the entryway, tomorrow's builders today. Students from every part of the region milled around tables set up in rows, displaying posters with sleek infographics, polished gadgets, and 3D printed prototypes. Some wore matching team t-shirts. Others had glossy brochures and QR codes printed on foam boards. Malik had none of that. What he had was a device wrapped in a clean towel, a trifold poster printed on the school copier, and a heart full of hope stitched together with quiet grief. Ms. Ellis walked beside him as they entered the exhibit hall. She had worn a blazer for the occasion, even though it still had chalk dust on the cuffs, and carried an old leather folder with backup copies of Malik's registration and presentation outline, just in case. She noticed the way his shoulders stiffened as they passed other students, kids with expensive-looking equipment and adults speaking in crisp, confident tones. You okay? She asked softly. He nodded, but his eyes flicked around the room. They look like they've done this before. Ms. Ellis smiled gently. And they've never done it like you will. Malik reached his assigned table, number 47, and began to unpack. The prototype sat in the center, resting on a small stand Ms. Ellis had borrowed from the science department. A simple poster behind it explained the project: a wearable stabilizer for Parkinson's patients. The diagrams were hand-labeled. The title was written in bold black marker. And next to it, Malik had placed a single printed photo of his grandfather, smiling from an old recliner, his hand resting gently on Malik's shoulder. By the time the judges began their rounds, Malik had gone over his pitch at least 10 times, pacing in place behind his table, mumbling to himself. Ms. Ellis and Aunt Cassie stood off to the side, watching silently. 3 judges approached, clipboards in hand, 2 women in East-Tech jackets, and an older man with a tweed coat and kind eyes. They introduced themselves warmly and began the questioning. "So, Malik," said the first woman, "walk us through the core functionality of your device." Malik cleared his throat, fingers tapping the edge of the table nervously. "The device uses motion sensors and an accelerometer to detect instability in the wearer's gait," he began. "If it senses a dangerous tilt or shake, it sends a small vibration to the wearer's hip to prompt posture correction. I designed it specifically for people with early-stage Parkinson's, like my grandfather." "And you built this on your own?" asked the second judge, brows raised. Malik hesitated, then glanced at Ms. Ellis. She gave him the smallest nod. "I had help, testing, and suggestions, but all the engineering, coding, and prototyping was mine. I sourced parts from old toys, electronics. The main board's from a salvaged Arduino. It's not perfect, but it works." He reached forward and powered on the device. A soft green light blinked on the side, and the small vibration motor buzzed once. The judges leaned in. "Can you show us a demonstration?" the man in the tweed coat asked. Malik strapped the device to his hip and walked a short distance, mimicking an unsteady gait. As soon as his posture dipped too far to the left, the device vibrated. The judges exchanged impressed glances. "That's a clever application of basic sensors," said the first woman. "Very real world." "It's simple but elegant," added the second. Malik felt a warmth rise in his chest, a kind of soaring that wasn't loud or overwhelming, but deeply grounded, like standing on something real for the first time. Then came the final question. What inspired this? Malik looked down at the photo of his grandfather. The lines around his eyes creased in a soft smile. When he spoke, his voice was steadier than he expected. "My grandfather was the strongest man I knew, but Parkinson's started taking pieces of him away. He'd shuffle more than walk, fall sometimes, but he never wanted help. Said it made him feel like a burden." Malik paused. "So I thought, maybe if the help could be quiet and respectful and smart, maybe he'd accept it. I started building this when I realized I couldn't fix him, but I could try to give him back a piece of control." Silence. Not the awkward kind, but the rare kind that falls over a room when the truth has been spoken with clarity and depth. "Thank you, Malik," the older judge said, voice low and sincere. "That was extraordinary." They moved on to the next table. Malik let out a slow breath. Ms. Ellis came over and placed a hand gently on his shoulder. "You did it," she whispered. "You didn't just build a project. You built a moment." He turned to her. "Is it enough, though? I mean, I don't have a 3D printer or a team. Some of these kids—" "Don't compare your beginning to someone else's middle," she interrupted. "You made something from heartache, and you did it with tools the world told you weren't good enough." An hour later, the award ceremony began. Rows of folding chairs faced a modest stage. Students fidgeted, whispered, waited. Malik sat with Ms. Ellis on one side and Aunt Cassie on the other, his hands clenched in his lap. The MC stepped up. Today we saw projects that amazed us. From AI-enhanced microscopes to eco-powered drones, the future is clearly in good hands. He read off several award winners: robotics, chemistry, data visualization. Each recipient climbed the stage to applause, posed for a photo, and beamed. Then the MC paused. Our final award today goes to a student who reminded us why we innovate. Not for profit, not for praise, but to solve real problems for real people. This year's Inspiration in Innovation Award goes to. He glanced down at his card, then smiled. Malik Thomas for his wearable stabilizer project. The room erupted. Ms. Ellis let out a gasp. Aunt Cassie covered her mouth. Malik didn't move. You better get up there, Ms. Ellis whispered, half laughing, half crying. Malik stood on shaky legs and made his way to the stage. The MC handed him a plaque and leaned in to say, "Keep building, son. You're going to change things." Malik took the microphone and looked out at the crowd. For a moment, he didn't speak. Then, "This award isn't just mine. It's for the people who believe in quiet work, who do the hard stuff even when no one's watching. My teacher believed in me when all I had was a broken laptop. That means everything." The applause thundered again. But just as he stepped off the stage, a woman in a sharp suit approached from the wings. She extended her hand and said, "I'm Mara Ellison, Head of Youth Innovation at East Tech. Malik, would you have a minute? I'd like to talk to you about something. Something important." Malik sat at the folding table in the post-awards reception area, the plaque resting on his lap like something sacred and unfamiliar. He didn't quite know what to do with it. He kept running his fingers along the engraved lettering, tracing each curve of his name, grounding himself in the reality that, yes, this had really happened. It wasn't a daydream or a what-if. He had stood on a stage, told his story, and people had listened. But now, something else stirred in the air. Something bigger, unexpected. Ms. Ellis stood a few feet away, talking with Aunt Cassie, when Mara Ellison from East Tech returned, holding 2 water bottles and a quiet urgency in her expression. "I don't want to overwhelm you," she began as she handed Malik a drink, "but I'd like to offer you something. We have a summer research program in Atlanta, mentorship, funding, materials, housing, everything covered. It's for students exactly like you, young builders with fire and vision but little access." Malik blinked. "You want me to go? I think you'd thrive there," she replied. "But that's not all. We're starting a Youth Innovation Council, and I'd like you to be on it. You'd help us advise future programs. We need voices like yours, Malik." He looked over at Ms. Ellis, who was watching quietly, eyes glistening. Then at Aunt Cassie, who gave him a barely perceptible nod of encouragement. But Malik shook his head slowly. "Thank you," he said. "But not yet." Mara blinked. "You're saying no?" He paused, gathering the words like tools in his mind before assembling them. "I want to go. Someday. But right now, there's this community center down the street from my place. It has dusty shelves and no internet. Kids hang out there after school just to stay off the street. Some of them want to build things too, but they don't know how. No one ever showed them." He looked up. "So I want to stay. For now. Build a makerspace. Teach what I know. Start something small like Ms. Ellis started something in me." Mara said nothing for a moment, then slowly nodded. "Then let us help you do that." By the following week, East Tech had donated 3 refurbished laptops, 2 sets of Raspberry Pi kits, and a modular robotic starter set. all delivered directly to the community center Malik had mentioned. Ms. Ellis helped him build a small shelf for the equipment, paint a banner, the inventor's bench, founded by Malik Thomas. On the first day, 5 kids showed up. By the third week, there were 14. Some built small devices, others drew designs on paper. Malik floated among them, showing how to strip wires, how to write simple code, how to believe in something before it existed. One day, a girl no older than 10 tapped his arm. "You really made a thing that helped your grandpa walk?" she asked. Malik smiled. "Yeah, I did." She looked up at him, eyes wide. "Think I could make something for my little brother? He's got a breathing machine. Maybe I could build a case for it or a sensor or something." "You can," he said softly. "You absolutely can." On the last Friday before summer break, Ms. Ellis stood in room 203 once again, packing up her things. Malik came in quietly, holding something wrapped in cloth. He placed it on her desk and unwrapped it. It was the original prototype, still scarred, still chipped. But it had been cleaned, mounted on a small wooden base, and beneath it, a plaque, "For Ms. Ellis, the first person who saw me." She smiled, but her hands trembled. "You know," she whispered, "I'll keep this forever." He nodded, and for the first time since that first quiet morning with the broken laptop, he let himself hug her. The boy who had once walked into her classroom carrying a broken machine had rebuilt more than just wires and circuits. He had rebuilt belief. He had built a future.